This morning on the Ag Issues program, a pleasure to bring on to the program, as always, Roger McEowen, professor of agricultural law and taxation at the Washburn University School of Law. He joins us this morning. Roger, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Greg. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you as well. Let's get right to it. A lot to talk about. And, of course, last week was the start of the Supreme Court hearing on President Trump's tariffs as to whether or not they are valid, they are legal, and everything else associated with it. And, we heard bits of audio that came out of the hearing as well. Just your reaction on what you heard and what you saw as far as transcripts are concerned of what was talked about, or what was the main focus of the justices' points on the hearing last week.
Well, Greg, what I heard, now I've had a chance to listen to it a little bit and read some more of the transcripts. I did national TV on that while it was coming out, and that was a little bit difficult to kind of read that. But you go back and look at this, some of the questions they're asking, they're way off base. This just tells me this is no place for the court to be getting involved. We're dealing with a phrase. What do two words mean? Regulate importation. Now, Chief Justice Roberts wants to call tariffs a tax. We know how he did with Obamacare and screwing up whether it was and conflating whether it was a tax or a credit, and that became a mess. Tariffs are not taxes. They indirectly might be with respect to a particular good, but if you buy a different good, there was no tariff on that one. So it's not a tax in the sense that it would be in the realm of Congress to lay taxes. That's not what the founders meant. In fact, I could take you, Greg, all the way back to 1792 and walk you through from President Washington all the way through to current times, where this has always been an executive branch power. And 6 times since the 1930s, the Congress has given more of the authority with respect to the regulation of international commerce and international conflicts to the executive branch, which is where it should belong, in my mind. Just imagine if the president didn't have the authority to lay tariffs in terms of a negotiating tool, and China did something to us or some other adversary that doesn't like us, and this is up to the Congress to react. That's not going to happen. You've got to react quickly. Now, the goal here, yes, there's a lot of revenue that's being generated, but that's not because it's a tax. They're regulating importation of goods to get to another goal, which is to eliminate tariffs and open up trade. It's a policy lever, and so as Justice Thomas pointed out, if we remove this lever from the executive branch, what other levers are we also removing? That was a real good question. He asked a good question. Some of the other questions, I'm puzzled over what Justice Barrett was saying, the non-delegation doctrine. Congress has not acted here. If Congress felt that since the late 70s and the act that they're discussing right now was a problem, they could have taken a lot of action. And really, if Congress was concerned about losing power on this issue, they would be a party to this case. They are not a party to this case. That tells me more than anything that Congress is not alarmed by this at all. And I would also point out that week before last, the Senate did take some action to try to claw back some of the tariff authority. I think that should be a message to the Supreme Court. Hey, you 9 unelected judges here, you stay out of it. We've got this. And so that tells me, okay, Congress can act in this area if they feel that the executive branch has overstepped its authority. So where are we at on this right now? I think it's 3-3-3. I think you've got 3 in the administration's camp, you've got 3 that are not in the administration's camp, and you got 3 in the middle. And that would be Gorsuch and Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts. So we'll see.
And you talked about the act, and correct me if I'm wrong, in 1977, the Emergency Powers Act, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the shortened term for it.
Okay. So explain more about what the president is using, enacting, I guess, for the emergency to be able to do this.
Yeah, that act, to truncate the discussion of that act says if the president declares a national emergency, he has the ability to levy tariffs. So to regulate importation is the actual language that's used. It doesn't use the word tariff. It used regulate importation, which that means tariffs. And this act was a result of what President Nixon did earlier in the year, and there's also a Supreme Court case that validated what President Nixon did. And I don't see that 1977 law as limiting the executive authority in this area at all. He's got a defined emergency in a couple of areas. One, obvious, the big one is fentanyl. We've had we're averaging 70,000 deaths a year, and that's coming from China. It's being filtered through Mexico and then up across the border. And just last week, President Trump got concessions from President Xi on that would stop. Now, that wouldn't have gotten there if it weren't for the threat and the imposition of some pretty stiff tariffs. So that's where tariffs are being used to bargain something else to deal with that emergency. That is the executive's power. That's not something that Congress can do. That's not an administrative agency issue. It's definitely not the courts. The courts are not the 9 justices on the Supreme Court are not economic experts. They shouldn't be playing in this game at all. They should immediately dismiss this case and wipe out the lower opinion and say this is not our domain. But that's how the 1977 law was used. I think that, frankly, in my view, that's a proper use of the law. And, Greg, if the administration does not have, if any executive does not have the ability, and I mean a future administration, does not have the ability to levy tariffs, we then are put as a nation at a distinct economic disadvantage compared to other countries that can then levy tariffs on imports of our goods into their countries, and we can't react very quickly because Congress is a very deliberative body, particularly in the Senate. And, again, they can't even keep things open, and we're, approaching 40 days on that now. We might have a breakthrough on that, but I just see this as damaging to the country if the court says that the president can't do this.
Another example of that is with the situation with Argentina and the comments the president made, but how much of the trade imbalance as far as beef is concerned that we import from Argentina versus export to Argentina, how much of a trade imbalance is there that weighs heavily in favor of Argentina?
Yeah, and you could look at numerous countries that we've got trade imbalances with.
And there's a long list of that,
too. Does that rise to the level of a national emergency for purposes of the 1977 Act? I'm thinking that that's not as strong a case as the fentanyl issue is, because we have people dead because of fentanyl, lots of people, far more people than died, for example, in Vietnam. He's got a right to address that issue, and they traced it down. It was coming from China, filtered through Mexico and up across the border. And that's where you really saw the president's use of tariffs to get another bargain done with China and eliminate that and get a commitment from Xi that the fentanyl issue would stop. I think that's a bigger issue. The trade imbalance issue is an issue. It's also associated with national security. We saw a lot of these issues during COVID with respect to supply chains coming through China that people learned that we don't produce some things that are pretty essential that we need to be producing. And that's also what the president's trying to do with tariffs, is pull that base of manufacturing for key goods back to this country. And that includes certain types of rare earth minerals, too. And we need those to run AI. We need those to run all types of critical things for our economy. So it's a pretty broad issue. I was somewhat troubled, in fact, quite a bit troubled by the questions coming from some of the justices last week. So it doesn't give me a great deal of optimism that they're going to get this thing right.
And some are saying, well, there's been a wide opinion as to when this decision is coming down. Some would say the early part of next year. You've even heard some saying it could be May or June before that decision comes out.
I don't think it'll be that. I was on record last week as saying we could have it by the end of the year. I think they'll fast-track this one. Obviously, they understand the importance of getting this out. But it could be early next year. I just don't see a scenario where it goes all the way to the end of the term.
Roger McEowen, professor of agricultural law and taxation at the Washburn University School of Law, is joining us on the program this morning. Roger, as you mentioned earlier, we at least took a step, one of many steps yet to come, to open the federal government once again, but emphasis on one of many steps that still needs to be taken.
Yeah, we could see it open as early as tonight, or if they keep moving on this, as late as Thursday, or not at all. So I think they've taken the first step to say we're going to get this done, and it looks like procedurally, if they're going to get it done, the Democrats could hold out as long as about 60 hours, and that would put us to Thursday evening. Because the House has to come back in session. The House has some procedural moves they have to do, and then there's a 60-hour rule that the Democrats would have if they want to just kind of do another filibuster of it, but that would have to end at that point in time. That puts us into about Thursday evening, I'm looking at. I'm still trying to decide whether to book a flight to Fargo, North Dakota for next week for a major speaking engagement. But I've got a backup just in case they don't get this open, because where I have to go through is either Minneapolis or Denver, and both of those airports are set for having flights curtailed to a degree. So it would be nice if they'd move quickly on this. It could be by tonight or it could be Thursday.
Now, as far as what is going on when it comes back open, that, of course, is what we are seeing of the rest of the Farm Bill that still needs to be passed, and there's still a good chunk of it as well. The important part, or some of the important parts, that is, were done in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. But the majority of the bill, which is SNAP, of course, is still a big chunk of this that still needs to be discussed and still needs to be passed, too.
Right. And you're right. We did get some major things in OBBBA. We got ARC and PLC. We got crop insurance. We got an increase in the loan rates. We got more provisions for beginning farmers. We got the basic core elements of what we would call a farm bill. They're in there. And there's a lot of increased funding that's going to flow to grain producers starting next October. But there's things that can't be dealt with in a reconciliation bill, which that was. And your conservation programs, the nutrition programs you mentioned, SNAP, rural development, research, extension, and education, forestry, horticulture, specialty crops, all those types of things, you don't deal with those in a reconciliation bill. And so that means that that's what they're looking at trying to do with what is commonly called a skinny farm bill.
Now, the two questions, or a couple of questions I had on that as well. There was always the theory of, if the farm bill was being voted as a whole, if you had issues with SNAP, you couldn't take that out and just vote on a separate farm bill because of the fact of the rural versus urban areas. Chances are it wouldn't pass. Well, here we go again, eventually into the future, as to how eventually they're going to vote on things in the future as to whether or not it was like this or in some sort of fashion that would be different than what we normally have seen.
Yeah, and I think OBBBA has changed this. I think it's highly likely that there'll be a standalone farm bill in the future, but its focus and size might be different because of OBBBA. It'll remain temporary legislation that will be updated periodically, probably about every 5 years, but key parts of that farm safety net are now secured for a longer horizon than usual. And so I think the One Big Beautiful Bill Act has materially changed the future of farm legislation. Not entirely, but has materially changed how we do farm bills going forward.
All right. One of the things, because we could talk a lot more about this, but wanted to get to something that I know, Roger, you said you've gotten a lot of calls on, and that is, well, talking about acreage anxiety, or in this case, zoning issues that potentially could kill your rural dream, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of an article I just wrote, and it's posting today at Ag Manager website for K-State, as well as on RFD TV, my blog there. And this is the issue. If I buy a rural property and I want to do some agricultural activities, I want to make sure that I'm in compliance with existing zoning rules and aren't basically zoned out of what I want to do on my dream property. And so the first thing that I go through in the article is to understand classifications. And I'm writing generically because I have readers all over the country, not just Kansas, but know the classification and what the purpose of that classification is. Is it ag? Is it rural residential? Is it exclusive farm use? Or is it unzoned or unrestricted? In the more rural areas, you may have an unzoned area. So my point is that your intended use might be perfectly reasonable in one rural area and then strictly prohibited in another. And we see that in Kansas. So you compare Shawnee County to Jackson County, or to Jefferson County. It's very, very different. So to avoid costly surprises, you have to investigate and follow specific restrictions. So know what your permitted uses are. Know if there's a residential density issue. Can you run a home-based business? What about accessory buildings? Are there limits on size, height, number, those types of things? Livestock and fowl. If you're going to raise livestock, if you're going to have chickens or other types of fowl, confirm whether there are any regulations or setbacks from property lines or manure management plans that you have to put in place. Are there limits on the number or type of animals per acre? Know those things in advance before you buy your property. And then maybe if you get stuck in a bad situation, what's the process for challenging zoning rules? What can I get a variance? Can I get some type of waiver, or can I get a formal rezoning? Those are all issues that might come up if the county challenges the use on your property. And then I get into, well, how do I research property zoning? How do I learn these things in advance? So that's all in the article.
And I guess I don't know. In that this could vary state by state and county by county, too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you'll have wide variations on this. You just have to pay attention to your particular county and maybe even municipal rules, because you could get a small rural town that might have ordinances of their own that can create a problem for you. And Greg, frankly, and I've seen this, I get some of these issues that come to me as the attorney for the Ag Mediation Service at K-State. In some of the really small towns, the little villages in Kansas, and you'll see this at the county level, and people know what I'm talking about. Sometimes, Greg, it's unfortunate, but sometimes it's the good old boy network. And so if they like you, you're going to be able to do what you want to do. If they don't like you, you may not be able to. And it's sad to say that happens, but I'll tell you, it does happen. So you want to make sure you understand what local ordinances are, what county zoning rules are. Those are different. And you could have little ordinances in small, unincorporated towns, perhaps, that are hanging around from prior years when they were an incorporated town. I've seen that come up in the past, too. So a lot of issues associated with this. I hope this piece is helpful to people as they take a look at it. Again, 2 places to find it while I'm still trying to figure out the problems with my own website, and that it's going to be on Ag Manager later today through the Ag Econ department, so agmanager.info. And then if you go to RFD TV, my blog appears there, and they'll have it posted today.
Well, I was just going to ask that, as a matter of fact. You trying to change servers and everything else is so much fun, but they can also read other information via your Substack as well?
This one I won't put behind a paywall on Substack.
Okay.
This is out. Ag Manager is going to be the one that people are most familiar with. It's also going to be on the RFD TV website where I have my blog there.
In some aspects, it's good you have multiple sites that you post things in as well. So, Roger, we're out of time. But as always, appreciate it. Thanks, and we'll talk to you here in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Greg.
That is Roger McEowen, professor of agricultural law and taxation at the Washburn University School of Law, as he joins us this morning on the Ag Issues program here on 580 WIBW.